After the family dinner, I opened my banking app and froze. The balance glared back at me. Zero. My $50,000. Everything I had saved through 40 long years of hard work and sacrifice was gone. My chest tightened as if the air had been ripped out of the room. My entire life's effort had vanished in one night. Sitting on my couch, my son Adrian let out a laugh I had never heard from him before. Cold, sharp, merciless. "We needed this more than you, Dad," he said, grinning with a face I barely recognized. "Old men like you don't need that kind of money anyway." Beside him, his wife Valeria Cruz nodded in agreement. Her eyes carried that same calculating look that always unsettled me. "It's better in the hands of people who will actually make use of it," she added with chilling certainty. I forced myself to breathe, though my hands trembled uncontrollably. Clutching my wallet, I steadied myself and replied in a calm voice I didn't know I still had. "Then you won't mind what's coming." My words only made them laugh harder, as if I had told a joke, but their laughter was cut short by a deafening crash that rattled the entire house. The front door flew open with such force that the walls shook. To understand how I ended up in this terrifying moment, I have to take you back just a few hours earlier. That morning, out of nowhere, Adrian had called me after 3 months of silence. His voice sounded different, gentler, almost apologetic. "Dad," he said, "Valeria and I want to come over tonight. Let us cook dinner at your house. You just relax. It's time we fix things between us." After months of bitter arguments over my wife's inheritance, after the shouting and the demands that he deserved the money, those words sounded like a gift from heaven. My heart, worn and weary, filled with hope. Perhaps my son had finally realized the pain he had caused. I spent the afternoon preparing for the dinner like I hadn't done since Eleanor's funeral. I wore the blue shirt Adrian had loved as a boy, the one he always said made me look successful. I dug through my drawer to find the watch Eleanor had given me on our 30th anniversary. Each tick was a memory of our years together, a life we built with love, the very life Adrian now seemed intent on tearing apart. As I combed my hair in the mirror, I heard Eleanor's voice echo in my mind. "Samuel, children sometimes lose their way, but true love will guide them home." Those words had been my anchor during the darkest 3 months of my life, months when my own son threatened to cut me off from my grandchildren if I didn't give him my savings. At 6 sharp, the doorbell rang. Adrian stood there holding red carnations, my favorite flowers. Valeria Cruz walked in, carrying a bag full of groceries. Inside were all the ingredients for my favorite meal, beef lasagna layered with cheese. For a moment it felt like the past, like those Sundays years ago when Adrian would visit with his family and we'd share meals together. The house seemed warm again, almost alive with the promise of peace. Over dinner, Adrian spoke with enthusiasm about his new project. He explained how he wanted to expand his small marketing company, his voice carrying the same energy I remembered from his youth. His eyes lit up with that same spark he had as a boy, with big dreams of becoming his own boss. For the first time in months, Valeria leaned forward and spoke kindly. She asked how my health was, whether I still met my friends at the country club, even complimented me on my haircut. "Dad," Adrian said gently as I set dessert on the table, "I want to apologize for everything that happened these last months. I know I was harsh on you. The truth is, the business is falling apart, the debts are piling up, and when Mum passed away, I thought you would be able to help us more." His eyes welled with tears that seemed so real, so convincing, my heart softened at once. I reached for his hand. "My son, your mother and I worked hard to save this money for my old age. But if you truly need help, we can arrange a loan that's fair for everyone." The grateful smile he gave me made me believe I had chosen the right path. It felt like at last our family was healing, but the moment dessert ended, everything changed. Adrian and Valeria exchanged a glance across the table. At the time, I didn't understand it. Now I know it was the look of hunters who had trapped their prey. Adrian cleared his throat and pulled out his phone. "Dad," he said, his voice no longer soft but firm and demanding, Before we finalize the loan, there's something you need to do. You must transfer the money tonight. All of it. The situation is urgent." A shiver ran down my spine. The sweetness of minutes before vanished instantly, replaced by a cold dread. "Adrian, I don't see why it has to be this way. We can go to the bank tomorrow, sit with the manager, and handle this properly." "No, Dad," Valeria cut in, her smile sharp and hollow. "It has to be now, tonight. There's an opportunity waiting for us, and if we miss it, it's gone forever." She stood and came closer, holding out my phone. "You already have the banking app. Just a few taps and it's done." My fatherly instinct battled fiercely with the pit of unease growing inside me. Something was terribly wrong, but Adrian was my son. For 35 years, he had been my pride, my joy. The little boy who once ran to greet me at the door after work. The young man who once promised to take care of me when his mother was gone. How could I look at him now and believe this was anything but genuine? How could I doubt my own son? Still, my voice trembled as I spoke. "Adrian, $50,000 is not a small sum. Your mother and I spent decades saving that money. I worked double shifts at the steel mill, picked up side jobs every weekend, even sold my old pickup when you had that medical emergency as a boy. Every dollar represents a sacrifice, a lifetime of struggle." Adrian let out an impatient sigh and sat beside me on the couch. He held my hands, but the warmth that once comforted me was gone. "Dad, don't you trust me? I'm your son. I'd never hurt you." Then his tone shifted, harder, sharper. "And technically, part of this money should be mine anyway. It's from Mom's inheritance." In that moment, the truth hit me like a stone. The dinner, the flowers, the fake tears, it had all been nothing but a show. Adrian hadn't come to make peace. He had come to finish what he had started 3 months earlier when he first demanded my money. "Adrian, we've already been through this," I answered, struggling to stay calm. "Your mother left everything in my care because she knew I would manage it wisely. When I'm gone, you and Daniel will inherit everything equally. But while I'm alive, this money belongs to me." His mask dropped completely. Adrian jumped to his feet and began pacing across my small living room, his voice filled with rage. "I can't wait for you to die, Dad. I need the money now. My business is collapsing. I'm drowning in debt. They're about to take my house. Can't you see your own son is desperate?" Valeria stepped closer, placing her hand on my shoulder. Her touch made me flinch. "Samuel, let's be realistic. You're 68 years old. Why do you need so much money at this stage of life? The house is paid off. You've already raised your kids. It's time to pass something on to the next generation." Adrian stopped pacing and stood in front of me, his eyes burning. "And if you don't help us now, I won't be able to keep bringing the kids to visit you. Valeria's right. You're not a good influence on them with this selfish attitude." The words struck me like a blow. Ethan and Isabella, my precious grandchildren, were the light of my life. The thought of losing them crushed me. For a moment my heart nearly gave in. But then deep inside I heard Eleanor's voice, firm, steady, urging me not to surrender. "All right," I whispered at last. "But not all of it. I'll transfer 10,000 tonight. The rest only after you show me a proper business plan. Proof, numbers, guarantees." Adrian and Valeria exchanged another silent look. This time the meaning was painfully clear. "That's not enough, Dad," Adrian said, his voice dangerously calm. "Either you and Daniel already suspects it." Valeria lied shamelessly. "We told him about your strange behavior. He agrees the money should be in younger hands." Lie. I knew my son Daniel too well. An honest lawyer, a man cut from his mother's cloth. He would never betray me like this, and yet the manipulation was so smooth, so relentless, that for a brief moment doubt crept in and poisoned my mind. With trembling fingers, I picked up my phone from the table. Adrian and Valeria's smiles widened with victory. "I knew you'd come to your senses, Dad," Adrian said sweetly, though the venom beneath his tone was obvious. "This is what's best for everyone." I opened the bank app and typed in my password. The glowing numbers made me freeze. $50,000, every sacrifice of my life condensed on that single screen. When I lifted my eyes, Adrian and Valeria were leaning over me like vultures circling a dying body, watching every movement, waiting to rip away what I had left. "Enter my full name, Adrian James Carter," my son whispered, "and then type in this account number." He began reciting digits one by one, numbers Valeria had carefully saved on her phone. "Adrian, is this really your account?" I asked, a knot tightening in my chest. Something didn't feel right. "Of course it is, Dad. It's my business account. I need to make the investment immediately," he replied, his tone sharp with impatience. But I noticed the way his eyes darted away from mine, just like he used to when lying as a child. Slowly my fingers moved across the screen. Each number I typed felt like I was betraying everything I had worked for, every sacrifice of my life. But then, just before pressing the button to finalize the transfer, something inside me shifted. I surprised even myself. Instead of sending the money, I faked it. My hands moved across the app, pretending to follow his instructions, but I never actually confirmed the transaction. My movements were pure theater. Adrian and Valeria leaned over, staring so intently at the screen that they didn't notice my deception. "All done," I murmured, closing the app quickly. "It's finished." Adrian leapt up with excitement and threw his arms around me. His hug was so strong it nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. "I knew I could count on you, Dad. You're the best father in the world." His joy looked so real, so convincing, that for a moment I almost believed I had done the right thing. Valeria leaned down and kissed my cheek. "Thank you, Samuel. Truly, this is going to change our lives forever." But behind her words was a smile so sinister it sent a shiver crawling down my spine. "Now," Adrian said, rubbing his hands together, "I think we should go. Tomorrow morning I need to be at the bank early to move the money." He hurried toward the door as though afraid to linger too long, as if worried I might catch on. "Leaving already?" I asked softly, forcing a sweet tone into my voice. "I thought maybe we could have some coffee, talk more about the family, about the grandchildren." "Another time, Dad," Adrian replied without even looking back. "We're tired, and tomorrow will be busy." Valeria already had her coat on, scrolling through her phone with a grin she could barely contain. I followed them to the door, masking my fear with the widest smile I could manage. "Have a wonderful night," I said, watching as they walked toward their car. Adrian didn't even stop to give me a hug, not like the boy who once clung to me after every visit. The second the door closed, I ran straight to my bedroom. From the drawer of my nightstand, I pulled out my old phone, the one I had used before buying the new one. It was outdated, but the bank app was still there, still active, still connected to my account. My hands trembled as I typed in my password. For a second I could barely breathe. Then the screen lit up. $50,000. Untouched. Still there. My chest pounded so hard I thought my heart would break free. My gamble had worked. Adrian and Valeria believed they had stolen everything, when in truth they hadn't taken a single cent, but the relief didn't last. I knew the moment they discovered the transfer hadn't gone through, they would be back, and next time there would be no fake smiles, no gentle act. I sat frozen on the bed, clutching my phone as if it were the only thing keeping me alive. My thoughts spun wildly. Should I call the police? Tell Daniel? Change all my banking passwords and pray it was enough? Before I could decide, the screech of tires outside cut through the silence. A car had pulled into my driveway, brakes slamming hard. Moments later, fists thundered against my front door. The house shook with every violent pound. Shouts filled the night, angry, distorted voices I barely recognized. "Dad, open this door right now!" Adrian roared, his tone twisted with a fury I had never heard before. "We know you lied to us." Valeria's voice shrieked from outside. "The money never hit the account. Stop being ridiculous and open up." Fear rooted me to the floor. This wasn't my son shouting anymore. This was a wild animal, stripped of humanity, ready to tear me apart. The pounding grew harsher, the lock rattling as they tried to break in. "Samuel," Adrian screamed, "I'm giving you 3 seconds to open this door, or I'll smash it down. 1, 2, he didn't bother to finish. The sound of his body slamming into the wood echoed through the house. My heart jumped as I realized he was trying to break down the very door of the home I had built with love. Hands shaking, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. But before I could speak, glass shattered from the kitchen. They had forced their way in. "I'm going to teach you what happens when you play games with me." Adrian's voice thundered from inside my own home. His heavy steps thudded against the hardwood floor, each one closer, each one angrier. "Give me the bank passwords now, or this will get very ugly," he bellowed. Valeria's voice rang out behind him, sharp and frantic. "Check the living room. Look for his wallet. He has to keep the cards somewhere." She sounded hysterical, like someone who had lost every shred of control. I stumbled back into my bedroom bathroom and locked the thin wooden door, though I knew it would never hold for long. My only defense was seconds of delay, seconds that might decide whether I lived through this night. With the phone pressed tight against my ear, I whispered my address to the emergency operator. "Please hurry," I begged in a trembling voice. "My son is trying to rob me. He's violent. I'm in danger." Before I could say more, the pounding started on my bedroom door. Adrian had found where I was hiding. "Dad, come out right now," he roared. "Don't make me do something I'll regret." "Adrian, please," I cried out from the bathroom, my voice cracking with desperation. "This isn't you. Stop before you do something you can't undo." "You made me this way," he shouted back, his words dripping with poison. "Your greed, your selfishness, that money belongs to me. Mum would have wanted me to have it." Then came the kicks, each one making the wood groan and split. Behind him, Valeria urged him on, her voice sharp and cruel. "Harder. Keep going. You're almost through." In the pitch-dark bathroom, trapped with nowhere to run, I realized a horrifying truth. The Adrian I had raised, the little boy who once drew Father's Day cards for me, was gone, dead. "Adrian, stop!" I screamed, summoning every ounce of strength I had left. "The police are already on their way." "Let them come," he roared, slamming the sledgehammer into the door again, widening the hole. "By the time they arrive, I'll already have what's mine." From my bedroom, Valeria's laughter rang out, high, manic, hysterical. She sounded almost entertained, as if the sight of her husband tearing apart his father's home was some twisted performance meant only for her. I shut my eyes and curled into the farthest corner of the bathroom, clutching my phone against my chest as if it were a shield. In that moment I thought of Eleanor. She had always been stronger than me, always braver. "Give me strength, my love," I whispered into the dark. "Help me survive this." The third strike from the sledgehammer splintered the door wide enough for Adrian's hand to slip through. His fingers clawed for the latch while I pressed myself against the wall, trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Almost got it," he shouted to Valeria. "Find something to tie him up. He can't escape." The word tie pierced through me like a knife. My own son was planning to bind me like a criminal, like an animal. The depth of his betrayal stole my breath away. The lock finally gave way and the door swung open. Adrian stepped inside, looking like a demon from hell itself. His face burned red with fury, his hair wild, his eyes blazing with madness I had never seen before. The sledgehammer dangled from his hand. "Finally," he said with a crooked smile, "now we're going to make this simple, Dad. You're going to sit in that chair," he pointed toward my bedroom, "and you're going to transfer every cent from that account into mine. No tricks, no lies, no games." "I won't do it," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "You can beat me, you can tie me down, do whatever you want, but I will not reward this insanity by handing over my money." For a moment I thought he was going to strike me. Adrian lifted the sledgehammer high, and my heart stopped. But instead of hitting me, he turned and smashed it into the mirror above the sink. The glass shattered into 1,000 shards, raining down like cruel diamonds across the tile floor. "Look what you make me do," he screamed, his voice breaking with rage. "This is all your fault. If you were a normal father, if you really loved us, we wouldn't have to go this far." Valeria appeared behind him, her face cold, her arms full of the bedsheets she had ripped from my room. "Here," she said flatly. "Tie him up." Her voice carried no hesitation, no humanity. She rummaged through my wallet, pulling out my bank cards. "We just need him to give us the security codes," she told Adrian, her tone chilling. Together they seized me, their hands like iron. My legs buckled beneath me as they dragged me toward the desk chair, but somehow my mind grew clearer than ever. Adrian shoved me down into the seat, his grip cruel and unrelenting. But then faintly, cutting through the chaos, I heard it, the wail of sirens in the distance. The police. They were coming. "Do you hear that?" I said, smiling despite my fear. The sound rose up from my soul. "They're on their way. They're coming for you," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos. Adrian peered through the shattered window of my bedroom and swore loudly. "Damn it, there are more than 5 patrol cars out there." His eyes, red and wild, locked onto me. "This is all your fault. You ruined our lives." I stayed silent while Valeria fumbled with the sheets, trying to bind my hands. My reply was simple but sharp. "No, Adrian. You ruined yourselves the moment you chose to become thieves." The sirens grew louder, echoing through the night. Adrian paced back and forth like a trapped animal, panic etched into his movements. "We've got to get out of here," he yelled to Valeria, but she had another plan. She stepped closer, holding my own phone like a weapon. Her voice dripped with threat. "Listen to me. You give us 5 minutes to finish the transfer, or I'll tell the police this was all a family misunderstanding, that you invited us, then lost control and attacked us. And when they leave," Adrian added coldly, "we'll be back to finish what we started. But next time, it won't be this easy for you." From outside came the slam of car doors and the heavy tramp of boots. Voices barked commands as footsteps thundered toward my house. Adrian and Valeria froze, staring at each other in pure panic. Their time was up. "Police, open the door!" a voice boomed from the front of the house. Adrian bolted toward the living room, probably hoping to escape, but seconds later he returned, his face pale and defeated. "They've surrounded the place," he muttered. "There's no way out." Then came the deafening crash. The front door burst off its hinges and slammed against the wall. Heavy boots stormed inside, shaking the floor. Voices roared through the house. "Police! Hands up! Everybody on the ground!" Adrian and Valeria stood frozen in my room like deer caught in headlights. The sledgehammer still dangled from Adrian's hand. Valeria still clutched the sheets she had tried to tie me with, and I remained strapped to the chair, the living proof of what they had done. "Here!" I shouted with everything I had left in me. "We're in the main bedroom." The footsteps rushed in our direction. Within seconds, 3 officers appeared at the door, weapons drawn. The scene before them needed no explanation. "Drop everything. On your knees," the commanding officer barked. "Hands behind your heads." Adrian let the sledgehammer fall with a heavy metallic clang that rang through the silence. Valeria dropped the sheets as if they were burning her skin. Both knelt slowly, raising their hands as the officers moved in with handcuffs ready. "Are you injured, sir?" a female officer asked gently as she cut away the sheets from my wrists. Her hands were firm yet careful, exactly what I needed in that moment of shock. "Not physically," I answered in a trembling voice, "but they tried to take my money. They threatened me, tore apart my house, and forced me to attempt a $50,000 transfer." As other officers cuffed Adrian and Valeria, I could see the shock begin to settle in their faces. Adrian looked at me with an expression that was half sorrow and half resentment, as if he still believed I was the reason for his downfall. "Dad," he begged as they pulled him to his feet, "please don't do this. I'm your son. Think of the grandchildren. Think of the family." I steadied my voice and replied calmly, "I am thinking of the family. That's exactly why I won't let you turn into the kind of man your mother would never have recognized." Valeria tried a different strategy. "Officer," she cried out to the man securing her wrists, "this is all a mistake. He invited us to dinner. My father-in-law has mental problems. He made this all up." But the evidence was undeniable. The shattered window, the busted door, the sledgehammer on the floor, and me, still tied to a chair with sheets. No lie in the world could explain that away. As Adrian and Valeria were escorted to the patrol cars, one officer remained behind to take my statement. He was an older man, close to my age, with kind eyes that briefly reminded me of the Adrian I once knew, the boy who had drawn me Father's Day cards. "Mr. Carter," he said softly, "I know this must be painful. Filing charges against your own child is never easy. Are you certain you want to go through with this?" I turned toward the window. Outside, I saw Adrian being pushed into the back of a squad car. For a moment, our eyes locked through the glass. His gaze carried a silent plea, a desperate attempt at emotional manipulation, one last hope that I would give in to paternal instinct and forgive. But I saw something else in those eyes too, years of greed, years of entitlement, years of resentment. I saw the face of a man who had terrorized his father for money, who would do it again if I let him. And in that moment I understood. If I didn't stand firm now, this nightmare would only return again and again. "Yes," I told the officer, my voice steady as stone. "I want to press every possible charge." 3 hours later, silence filled the house. The officers had gone. The crime scene technician had finished taking photographs and left. I stood alone in the ruins of what was once my safe home. Broken glass cracked under my shoes as I walked slowly through the rooms, staring at the wreckage left behind by my own son. The bathroom mirror was nothing but shards on the floor. The bedroom door had a gaping hole where Adrian had slammed the sledgehammer into it. My desk was overturned, papers scattered everywhere from where Valeria had ransacked it, hunting for my bank documents. It looked like a tornado had ripped through my life. I sank down on the bed, the torn sheets still tangled there, the same sheets they had tried to use to tie me up. For the first time since this nightmare began, I broke down. Not from fear, not from pain, but from grief. I wept for the son I had lost, the sweet boy who once built sandcastles with me on the beach in Galveston, the young man who once promised he would always protect me. The ringing of the phone cut through my sobs. It was Daniel, my younger son. "Dad, I just heard what happened. I'm on my way. Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine, son," I answered, though my voice trembled. "Physically, I'm fine." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said firmly. "Don't touch a thing, don't clean up. I want to see it exactly as it is." He paused, and I could hear the heaviness in his silence. We both knew we were talking about his brother. When Daniel arrived, he wrapped me in a hug so strong I thought my ribs might crack. Taller than Adrian, with his mother's steady presence, he held me like he could anchor me back to safety. But when he let go and took in the sight of the house, his face hardened. "My God," he whispered, eyes sweeping across the wreckage. "This looks like a war zone. Did Adrian really do all this?" I told him everything from Adrian's unexpected phone call that morning to the moment the police dragged him away in handcuffs. Daniel listened silently, his jaw tightening more with every detail until I finished. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you," he said at last. 2 weeks ago, Adrian came to see me. He wanted me to help him find a lawyer to challenge Mum's will. When I refused, he lost his temper. He even threatened to stop bringing the kids if I didn't support him. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. "Because I thought I could talk him down," Daniel admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I believed he'd come to his senses. I was wrong. I should have warned you. I should have been here to protect you." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's not your fault, son. Adrian chose this path. These were his decisions." Daniel stood, pacing the room, inspecting the destruction like an investigator. Then he turned back, his tone shifting to the firm voice of a lawyer. "As your attorney, I recommend filing for a restraining order immediately. And as your son, I'm telling you, never let that lunatic near you again. Do you think I'm a bad father?" I asked softly, my voice heavy with doubt. "For calling the police on my own son?" Daniel stopped and looked at me with an expression so much like his mother's that my heart ached. "Dad, you didn't call the police on your son," he said firmly. "You called the police on a criminal who happens to share your blood. There's a world of difference." That night, Daniel refused to leave me alone. We installed temporary alarms on every window and door, and he stretched out on the couch in the living room with a baseball bat at his side. I lay awake, restless, my body trembling at every sound. A creak in the floorboards made my pulse race. Each ringing phone tightened the knot in my chest. Every car that passed outside sent me rushing to the window, terrified it was them coming back. By 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep. I walked to the kitchen and put water on to boil for tea. As I waited, my eyes landed on an old photo stuck to the refrigerator. It was Adrian at 8 years old, gap-toothed and beaming, his arm wrapped proudly around Daniel after a youth soccer game. They both looked so happy, so innocent. "Can't sleep," Daniel's voice came from the doorway. He stood there, his hair messy, worry written across his face. "I keep thinking about him," I admitted. "How we ended up here. Where did I fail as a father?" Daniel walked over and gently took the photo from my hands. "Dad, you raised us both with the same values, the same love, the same chances. One of us chose to defend people as a lawyer. The other chose to threaten his own father for money. That choice wasn't yours. It was his. But he's my son, Daniel," I whispered. "For 35 years, he was my pride, my joy. And for these past few months, he's been my greatest torment." Daniel's voice cut through the pain with cold clarity. "Dad, the Adrian you love, the sweet boy in this picture, he's gone. He died long ago. The man who came here last night may look like him, but he isn't him. His soul is gone." 2 days later, the detective in charge of the case called me. His voice was steady, professional. "Mr. Carter, your son Adrian and your daughter-in-law Valeria have been formally charged. Attempted robbery, home invasion, destruction of property, elder abuse. Bail is set at $50,000 each." "50,000, I repeated bitterly. "The exact amount they tried to take from me." "That's correct, sir," the detective continued. "And there's more. During questioning, we learned that Valeria had been planning this for months. She kept a notebook with details of your habits, your daily routines. She even researched ways to access your bank accounts. The revelation struck me like a blow. My own daughter-in-law had been studying me like prey, plotting for the perfect moment to strike. Valeria had been circling me like a predator for months, studying my habits, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when the time came, she used my own son as her weapon. We also found out they're drowning in gambling debts," the detective continued. "Over $200,000. Your son owes money to very dangerous people. That would explain his desperation." After the call ended, I sat in my torn-up living room, trying to process it all. Adrian hadn't just tried to rob me. He had been living a double life, one I knew nothing about. Gambling, threats, hidden debts. How long had he been lying to me about who he really was? A week after the arrest, another call came, this one from Adrian's public defender, a young woman named Olivia. Her voice was weary, as though the case itself had aged her. "Mr. Carter," she began, "your son wants to see you. He's been asking for a visit since his arrest. He says he has something important to tell you, something that could change how you see all of this." "I don't want to see him," I said quickly. The thought of sitting in the same room as Adrian filled me with anxiety. "I understand," Olivia replied gently. "But as his attorney, I need to tell you this. Your son says the people he owes money to have made death threats. He claims they've threatened his family if he doesn't pay soon. According to him, his desperation wasn't only greed, it was survival." Her words froze my blood. Family. That meant me. That meant my grandchildren. He hadn't given details, but the implication was clear. If Adrian couldn't pay, they would go after those closest to him. I immediately called Daniel. He arrived at my house faster than I thought possible. When I told him what Olivia had said, his face darkened. "Dad, even if that's true, it doesn't excuse what he did," Daniel said firmly. "No threat, no danger, justifies trying to rob and terrorize your own father." "But Daniel," I asked, fear tightening my chest, "what if the children are in danger? What if these people come after Ethan and Isabella because Adrian can't pay?" Daniel went quiet, thinking. Then he nodded. "Fine, we'll go see him, but on my terms as your lawyer. And if this turns out to be another trick, it'll be the last time we ever hear him out." 2 days later, I found myself in the cold, sterile visiting room of Harris County Jail. I sat waiting to see my son for the first time since the night they took him away in handcuffs. Daniel sat beside me, his briefcase heavy with legal files and an audio recorder set in front of him. When Adrian finally entered, I barely recognized him. He looked thin, his face sunken, dark circles under his eyes like bruises. His orange jumpsuit hung off him like it belonged to someone else. But what struck me most wasn't his body, it was his eyes. The arrogance was gone, the bitterness too. What sat before me now was only fear, raw and heavy in his eyes. "Dad," Adrian whispered, lowering himself into the chair across from us. "Thank you for coming. I know I don't deserve it." "Talk," Daniel cut in coldly. "You've got 10 minutes. Adrian drew in a shaky breath and began. "6 months ago, Valeria convinced me to go with her to a casino in Louisiana. She told me it would be harmless fun, that we'd each just bet $200. His hand shook as he spoke, his voice hollow. "But that place, Dad, it was like a drug. The more I lost, the more I needed to keep playing, to win it back." "How much did you lose?" Daniel asked, pen already scratching across his notepad. "At first it was 10,000, Adrian said quietly, then 20, then 50. Every time I lost, the casino loan sharks pushed more credit on me. They made it sound easy, pay it back whenever you want." He buried his face in his hands. "By the time I realized how deep I was, I owed 200,000. "And the threats?" I asked, even though my stomach turned at the thought of hearing the answer. "They started 2 months ago," Adrian admitted. "At first it was phone calls. Then they came to my work. Then," his voice cracked, "then they showed up at E." "And now that you're locked up," Daniel pressed, "what happens with the threats?" Adrian hesitated, then pulled a crumpled note from his pocket. "Yesterday, another inmate with connections slipped this to me." He slid it across the table. "It says if I don't pay in 2 weeks, they'll go after my family to send a message." Daniel unfolded the note and read it carefully. His expression hardened like stone. "This looks real. The names mentioned here, they're well known in the loan shark world." After the visit, Daniel and I went straight to the police. We handed over every piece of evidence Adrian had given us. The detective in charge listened closely, his face grim, and made copies of everything. "Mr. Carter," the detective told me, "we'll start investigating these threats right away, but in the meantime I strongly advise you to be careful, change your daily routines, don't stay alone. If possible, consider moving somewhere else temporarily." "And my grandchildren?" I asked, my voice tight with fear. "We've already sent patrol units to their school to speak with the principals," he replied. "We're also coordinating with Child Protective Services to make sure the children are safe." That night, inside my renovated home that suddenly felt more like a trap than a refuge, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my brother Thomas, who lived in Montana. "Thomas, I need to stay with you for a while," I said without hesitation. His voice was steady, protective. "Of course, brother. Tell me what's going on." I explained everything. He didn't interrupt once, just listened in silence. When I finished, he spoke firmly. "Come immediately. Tomorrow I'll be there to pick you up." The next morning, Daniel drove me to Houston Intercontinental Airport. On the way, he pressed a new phone into my hand. "This number's only with me," he said. "Anything you need, call me. I'll handle everything here. The kids, the investigation, you just focus on staying safe." When I reached Montana, Thomas's ranch was the opposite of the chaos I had left behind. Quiet, safe, vast fields stretching to the horizon. My brother greeted me with open arms. "Stay as long as you need," he told me. "Here, no one will touch you." A week later, Daniel called with extraordinary news. "Dad, they've arrested the entire group that was threatening Adrian. With his testimony and other witnesses, they managed to bring down the entire loan shark operation. The prosecutor says the threats to our family are officially gone. Does this mean I can go home?" I asked cautiously. "You can return whenever you want," Daniel assured me. Then his tone shifted. "But there's something else. Adrian has agreed to plead guilty to all charges. His lawyer worked out a deal, 5 years in prison in exchange for full cooperation." 5 years, I whispered. My grandchildren would grow up without their father. But deep down I knew maybe it was necessary. Maybe Adrian needed that time to confront what he had become. Daniel hesitated before continuing. Dad, there's more. Valeria's parents are fighting for custody of Ethan and Isabella. They've already filed. But you have every legal right as their grandfather to apply for temporary custody. And given the circumstances, I believe you'd have an excellent chance. The world seemed to stop spinning. Custody of my grandchildren. The thought both terrified and thrilled me. At 68 years old, raising two children again was a challenge that could break me or give me new purpose. What do you think about this? Thomas asked quietly, overhearing our conversation. I don't know if I have the strength to raise two kids at my age, I admitted honestly. Ethan is 8, and Isabella is only 6. They'll need so much love, patience and stability. Do I really have it in me? Thomas looked me straight in the eye. Brother, tell me, do you think there's anyone else in this world who could give them more love than you? He was right. No matter what had happened, Ethan and Isabella were still the brightest lights in my life. I want to apply for custody, I told Daniel during our next call. I've already started preparing the paperwork, he replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I knew this would be your decision. 3 weeks later, I stood inside a family courtroom in Helena, Montana, signing official documents to request temporary custody of my grandchildren. The judge, an older man with kind eyes, studied my file carefully before speaking. Mr. Carter, he said, I see you were the victim of an attempted robbery by the children's father. Are you certain you can set aside that trauma and take on the responsibility of raising them? I lifted my head, my voice stronger than I expected. Your Honor, what Adrian did to me was unforgivable. But Ethan and Isabella are innocent. They deserve stability, love, and a safe home. I can give them all of that. The judge nodded. Temporary custody granted for a period of 2 years, subject to review. When I walked out of that courthouse, I wasted no time. I called Thomas immediately. I got it, I told him, my voice shaking with relief. They're coming to live with me. That very afternoon, we began searching for a bigger house in Montana. I wanted a home with a wide yard where the children could play, close to a good school, and not far from Thomas and the circle of friends I had begun to build. 2 weeks later, Daniel arrived, bringing Ethan and Isabella with him. He had already explained to them that they would be staying with me while their parents worked through some problems. When they stepped out of the car, my heart nearly burst. Ethan had grown taller, his face carrying a seriousness no 8-year-old should have to wear. Isabella clung to her brother's arm, her wide brown eyes filled with uncertainty. "Grandpa," Ethan shouted, running into my arms. I squeezed him so tightly, I thought I might break him. Isabella walked more slowly, hesitant, but when I knelt down to her level, she rushed forward and wrapped her tiny arms around my neck. "Are we going to live with you forever, Grandpa?" she asked in her sweet, trembling voice. "You'll stay with me as long as you need, my love," I whispered, "and I promise we'll be very happy together." That first night, after tucking them into their new rooms, I sat alone in the living room of our new house. Through the window, the city lights stretched out into the Montana countryside, a picture of both peace and new beginnings. Just 3 months earlier, I had been a broken man, hiding in a bathroom while my own son tried to smash the door down to rob me. Now at 68, I was living in a new state, building a new life, surrounded by new friendships, and even discovering new parts of myself. I was no longer just the victim of betrayal. I was someone who had endured the unthinkable and come out not only alive, but transformed. Most importantly, I was now the guardian of 2 young souls who depended on me to heal, to grow, and to learn that the world, despite all its cruelty, could still be a safe and loving place. One night, as I prepared for bed in my Montana home, I heard Ethan's voice drifting from the next room. He was reading a bedtime story to Isabella. Their little voices mixed together, soft and pure, and I knew without a doubt I had made the right decision. Everything I thought I had lost, my security, my trust in family, the life I once knew, had been replaced by something far greater. I had been given a second chance to raise the next generation, this time with the wisdom that only comes after surviving life's darkest storms. A year after Ethan and Isabella came to live with me, a letter arrived that I hadn't expected. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky, almost unfamiliar, but I knew who it was from the moment I saw it. Adrian. It had been sent from the Federal Correctional Institution in Colorado. "Dear Dad," the letter began. "I know I don't deserve for you to even read this, but I need to try. I've spent months in prison thinking about everything I've done. I know that sorry will never be enough. No words can ever erase the pain I caused. But here, in counseling, I've been forced to face myself, to understand how I became the kind of man who could threaten his own father. I'm not giving excuses, Dad. I'm trying to change. I heard you have custody of Ethan and Isabella, and that you moved to Montana. At first I was angry. I thought you took them from me out of revenge. But then I realized the truth. They're better off with you. They always were. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I want you to know this. I'm giving up my parental rights. When I get out of here, I want you to have permanent custody. My children deserve stability. They need unconditional love. They need someone they can trust fully. That person is you, not me. I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I expect us to ever go back to what we were. I just hope that one day, as I sat there in quiet reflection, my phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Daniel, calling for his weekly check-in. It had become our ritual, his way of staying close to his niece and nephew, even from far away. "How are you, Dad? How are the children?" he asked. "We're fine, son. Better than fine. We're complete," I told him. I could hear his smile through the line. "I'm so glad to hear that. And Dad, there's something I need to tell you. I'm proud of you, truly proud." "Why?" I asked softly. "Because you took the worst situation a family could face and turned it into something beautiful. You gave those children the love and stability they needed, and you gave yourself a second chance to be happy." Daniel had visited us twice since we moved to Montana, and each time he seemed surprised at the changes, not only in Ethan and Isabella, but in me as well. During his last visit, he had snapped dozens of photos, saying he wanted to capture this chapter of our family's journey. "Dad, I also have news about Adrian," Daniel continued, his tone turning serious. "His lawyer called today. The appeal process is moving forward, but it will take at least another 3 years. He's been a model inmate, doing every program offered, but the treatment for his gambling addiction will take time, 3 more years. By then, Ethan would be 12. Isabella would be 9. They would have spent their most important childhood years here, in this house, with me as their steady guardian. Their father would fade further into memory, more a figure from their early years than someone actively present in their lives. "How do you feel about that, Dad?" Daniel asked quietly. Relieved, I admitted truthfully. "These children need stability, and they have it here. If Adrian truly changes, there will be time to rebuild their bond. But for now, they need what I can give them." After the call ended, I sat again under the vast Montana sky, the air still and clear. Inside, I could hear the soft breathing of Ethan and Isabella as they slept peacefully in their rooms. And in that silence, I became aware of something I had been too busy to notice during the day, the strong, steady rhythm of my own heart. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady, strong, filled with purpose and gratitude. The man who had walked into that family dinner 18 months ago had been a victim bracing for the next blow life would deliver. He was passive, letting the world happen to him. But the man sitting now on this Montana porch was someone else entirely, a survivor, a man who had turned his pain into strength, his trauma into transformation, his losses into unexpected gains. In these quiet evenings, I often thought of Eleanor. I liked to imagine she could see us now, her grandchildren thriving, her husband rediscovering a reason to live. Sometimes I even spoke to her, sharing little updates, Ethan's latest soccer goal, Isabella's progress on the piano. "You'd be so proud of them, Eleanor," I whispered to the stars, "and I hope you're proud of me too. I never thought I'd be raising children again at this age, but I guess I had more left in me than I realized." Montana's seasons were more dramatic than anything I had ever experienced in Houston. That first winter was a challenge, learning to drive in the snow, keeping the house warm against bitter cold, making sure the kids had the right coats and gloves for sledding and snowmen. But it was also breathtaking. The way the snow covered the land in flawless white made the world look both harsh and magical. Spring brought renewal. I started a small garden behind the house and taught the children how to plant seeds, water them, and watch them grow. Ethan had a natural gift for it, carefully spacing the rows and remembering the schedule better than I did. Isabella was less interested in the vegetables, but loved the flowers. She'd spend hours arranging wildflower bouquets she picked from along the fence line. Summer stretched the days long and bright. We packed picnics for the creek, where Ethan tried to catch minnows in a mason jar while Isabella collected shiny stones. Thomas often joined us, teaching the children about birds, tracks, and the wildlife that filled the area. Evenings seemed endless, filled with the sound of children's laughter and the smoky smell of barbecue drifting through the warm air, and then came fall again, marking our second full cycle of seasons here. By then, Montana wasn't just where we lived. It had become who we were. The school calendar, soccer practices, Christmas excitement, birthday parties, even nightly arguments about homework or vegetables, all of it had woven itself into the very fabric of my life. And for the first time in a very long time, when I thought about tomorrow, I didn't feel fear, I felt hope. For the first time in years, I felt true expectation, not fear, not dread, but confidence. I knew that whatever came next, I had the strength to face it. More importantly, I had the love of two small children who had given me back the joy of living. Ethan and Isabella gave me something I never realized I was missing, a reason to think about tomorrow, to plan for next year, to believe in a future that would outlast my own lifetime. When Ethan spoke about what he wanted to be when he grew up, or when Isabella excitedly made plans for her next birthday, I was reminded of a powerful truth. Life continues, hope endures, and love always finds a way to return, even after the deepest betrayals. Life had shown me something I would never have believed before, that sometimes you have to lose everything in order to discover what truly matters. The quiet widower I once was would never have known the messy joy of raising young children again. The man betrayed by his own son would never have understood the depth of love between a grandparent and a grandchild. The victim of that terrifying night would never have discovered the strength to rise and build something beautiful from the ashes of his past life. Looking back, I realized I wouldn't change a single moment of what happened, because it led me here. Even Adrian's betrayal, as painful as it was, had brought me to this place, to a life filled with meaning and love, to children who needed me as much as I needed them, to a future as wide and open as the Montana sky, endless and full of promise. The old house in Houston, with all its memories, was gone now. The ranch in Montana had become our true home, filled with new traditions and new moments we were creating every single day. The grandchildren who had once only visited had now become, in every real way, my children. And the man who had once been a victim had become a protector, a provider, and a source of unwavering love. That night, as I prepared for bed, I listened to the sound of Ethan reading aloud to Isabella, a new tradition they had made their own. His voice, deeper now, worked carefully through her favorite story, while Isabella giggled, asked questions, and filled the room with laughter. Those sounds became the lullaby of my new life, the proof that love can win over betrayal, that broken families can be rebuilt, and that second chances are real, priceless, and worth everything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, and new reasons to love and be loved. The man who once sat alone at his kitchen table would now wake to the chaos of breakfast, backpacks, and last-minute school forms, and he would cherish every wonderful, exhausting, meaningful second of it. Hey everyone, thank you for watching Infidelity Tales Hub. If this story touched your heart, please tap that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories about family, resilience, and second chances. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I truly love seeing our community from all around the world. Your support means the world to us. One night, as I tucked Ethan into bed beneath his Dallas Cowboys comforter, he looked at me seriously. Grandpa, when are Mom and Dad coming back? It was the question I had both expected and feared. Child psychologists had warned me that one day they'd ask. They needed answers. Your dad is in a special place for a longer time, my love, I told him softly. He's learning important things so he can become a better person. And your mum will be out sooner. But for now, the judges decided it's best for you and Isabella to stay here with me. I hesitated, then asked, "Does that make you sad?" Ethan frowned, his brow tightening as if he were working out a hard math problem. "A little," he admitted, "but I also like living with you. Here I feel safe." His words broke me and healed me at the same time. No 9-year-old should have to learn the difference between feeling safe and unsafe. But life had forced that wisdom onto him too early. 6 months later, Valeria was released from prison. Her very first request was to see the children. The court agreed, but only under strict rules, 1 hour every 2 weeks, supervised by a social worker at the Family Services office in Billings. Preparing for that first meeting was harder than I had imagined. Isabella hardly slept the night before. She kept asking me again and again if her mommy would be mad at her. Ethan, on the other hand, shut himself away. He spent most of the morning in his room, silently rearranging his baseball cards, trying to hide his feelings in order. The Family Services building was cold and unwelcoming, with harsh fluorescent lights and stiff plastic chairs. The supervised visitation room was painted in bright yellows and blues, with toys scattered about to make it seem cheerful. But no paint or toys could cover the sadness that lingered in that space. When Valeria finally walked in, I barely recognized her. Prison had stripped away her shine. She looked thinner, her once polished nails now short and bitten. The expensive clothes she once wore were gone, replaced by plain jeans and a simple sweater. But what struck me most wasn't her appearance. It was her eyes. The hard, calculating stare I remembered had vanished. In its place was something new, remorse. The visit was heartbreaking. The moment Isabella saw her mother, she burst into tears and clung to my leg. Not from joy, but from fear and confusion. She recognized her face, but sensed something wasn't the same. Children see truth in ways adults often ignore. Ethan was calmer, but I could see the strain in his shoulders, the stiffness in his little body. When Valeria tried to hug him, he stood like a soldier at attention, polite but distant. He answered her questions in short phrases, as if she were no more than a stranger. "Hello, my loves," Valeria said softly, her voice trembling. "Mummy missed you so much." Isabella buried her face deeper into my shoulder, peeking out only once or twice, as though unsure if this woman really was her mother. Ethan stood firmly beside me, protective and watchful, as though guarding us both. The social worker, Mrs. Clara, a kind woman with gentle eyes, tried her best to ease the tension. She suggested games, activities, anything to spark a natural conversation. But the awkwardness filled the room like a heavy cloud. After all, how do you reconnect with children after missing such important months of their lives? On the drive back to the ranch, silence hung in the air. The Montana countryside stretched out beyond the truck windows, golden fields rolling endlessly. Then Ethan finally broke the quiet with a question that left me speechless. "Grandpa," Ethan asked softly, his eyes serious in the rearview mirror, "why did Dad and Mum do bad things? Are we going to do bad things too when we grow up?" The question pierced my heart. I eased the truck onto the side of the road, near a wide field where cattle grazed quietly in the fading light. This wasn't the kind of talk to have while driving. I turned in my seat so I could face both children. Isabella sat in her booster chair, clutching her doll, while Ethan sat buckled in beside her, waiting for my answer. "My loves," I began gently, "sometimes adults make terrible choices. Fear, greed, or desperation can cloud their judgment. But that doesn't mean you'll repeat their mistakes. You're going to grow up knowing the difference between right and wrong." "How do we know what's right?" Isabella asked in her small, uncertain voice. I thought of Eleanor, my late wife, and the values we had tried to pass on to our boys. Her words had been my compass in the darkest days of my life. When you have to make a choice, I told them, ask yourself, will this hurt someone? Is it honest? Is it something a person who truly loves would do? If the answers feel right, then it's probably the right path. Ethan nodded, his young face serious beyond his years. Isabella fiddled with the straps of her car seat, trying to make sense of ideas almost too big for a 6-year-old mind. As the months rolled by, I noticed changes in myself I hadn't expected. I had more energy, more purpose, more joy than I'd felt in years. The quiet afternoons I once spent reading alone in Houston had been replaced by homework battles and laughter at the kitchen table in our Montana home. The silence of lonely dinners had been replaced by noisy chatter, with all of us talking at once, sharing pieces of our day. Now my mornings started before sunrise, often at 5:30, without even needing an alarm. My body had simply adjusted to the rhythm of family life. I'd brew the coffee, check the weather, then move straight into breakfast. Ethan always wanted pancakes on the weekends, but preferred cereal during the week. Isabella was braver. She'd try anything I cooked, her curiosity bigger than her appetite. One afternoon, while we were baking chocolate chip cookies together, Isabella's little hands covered in flour, she looked up at me and asked, "Grandpa, were you happy before we came to live with you?" Her question stopped me cold. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" I replied. "Because now you laugh more," she said matter-of-factly. "You sing when you cook. And sometimes I see you dancing when you clean the house." She was right. Without even realizing it, I had changed. The quiet, lonely man I once was had given way to someone new, someone lighter, someone more alive. Raising my grandchildren gave me a second life I never thought I'd have. The man who once lived quietly, reading books and tending a small garden, had turned into someone who sang old country songs while washing dishes, someone who could name every character from the children's shows that played on our TV. The house we'd chosen was perfect for our little family, a 3-bedroom ranch-style home on 2 acres just outside Billings, with a wide kitchen that quickly became the heart of our home. Out back stood a red barn where I kept my tools, but on rainy days it became the children's playground. Thomas lived only 10 minutes away, and he slipped naturally into the role of a second grandfather. He taught Ethan how to fish in the creek that ran behind his property and patiently listened to Isabella's endless chatter about her classmates and school adventures. The children built routines that shaped our days. Ethan had soccer practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays, with matches every Saturday. Isabella took piano lessons each Wednesday afternoon with Agnes Novak, an elderly Polish woman in town who had endless patience for 6-year-old hands that could barely stretch across the keys. Evenings belonged to homework at the kitchen table, me guiding Ethan through his multiplication tables while helping Isabella with her reading. After dinner, we'd gather in the living room. The children would sit on the floor with Legos or coloring books while I read the newspaper or puzzled over a crossword. Bedtime became a sacred ritual. Isabella always demanded 2 stories and 3 songs before closing her eyes. Ethan, growing older, often read by himself, but still wanted me to sit beside him for a few minutes, talking about his day, his friends, his dreams. One night, after tucking them both in, I sat out on the porch and thought about how far life had carried me. 18 months earlier, I had been a lonely widower, living in silence after Eleanor's death, convinced my best years were behind me. I believed the rest of my days would drift by in quiet decline, keeping company only with memories. But now, at 69, I woke each morning with purpose. My days were filled with responsibility, yes, but also with joy. I knew the names of Pokemon characters. I sang along to Disney movies. I went to parent-teacher meetings and Saturday soccer games. I helped with science projects, kissed scraped knees, and found myself living a life fuller than I had ever imagined possible. The Montana sky stretched endlessly above me, brighter than anything I had ever seen back in Houston. Stars filled the darkness, countless and alive, while the air carried the crisp scent of pine and the faint sound of cattle settling for the night. This land had become my home in a way I never expected. The vast, open spaces seemed to mirror something inside me that had once felt trapped and suffocated in my old life.